Welcome back to Business Demotivation, the show where ambition turns into action. And today we're talking about one of the most powerful tools in business that almost nobody treats like a real strategy, the element of surprise.
And just to be clear, I'm not talking about luck. I'm not talking about waking up and throwing darts at a wall. I'm talking about using the unexpected on purpose. Because here's the truth, predictable companies often get overlooked. But surprising companies, the ones that break the pattern in a meaningful way, they get remembered. So let me ask you a question to kick this off. Think about the last brand, leader, or entrepreneur that really grabbed your attention. Like, truly got you to stop scrolling, stop ignoring, and actually pay attention. What did they do? Chances are, they did something you weren't expecting. A sudden product drop. A bold and unusual marketing angle. A customer experience that felt personal. Or even just a way of thinking that didn't sound like the same recycled advice. That's why surprise matters. It interrupts patterns. And business is full of patterns. Customers get used to average service. Teams get used to routine meetings, routine goals, routine energy. Competitors get used to seeing you make the same kind of moves again and again. When you break that expectation in a positive way, people notice. And attention, real attention, is one of the most valuable currencies you can earn. Not just because attention can turn into traffic or sales, but because attention is the doorway to trust, interest, and loyalty. Now, why does surprise work so well? It's not just a marketing trick. It's psychology. Your brain is designed to detect the unexpected. When something surprises you, your focus locks in. You become more alert. You start looking for meaning. You want to understand what just happened and why. That's why a small, unexpected act of kindness can stay with you for years. That's why a clever innovation spreads so fast. That's why a surprise opportunity can change your entire life path. In business, surprise creates emotion. And emotion creates memory. People might forget the exact words you used in your pitch. They might not remember the bullet points on your website. But they will remember what it felt like to interact with you. They'll remember whether you made them feel valued, impressed, understood, energized, or inspired. So let's make this practical. What does a strategic surprise look like in real life, especially if you're not a giant brand with a massive budget? Picture a small coffee shop that adds a handwritten thank you note in every delivery order. Nothing fancy, just a few sincere words. That's unexpected. And because it's unexpected, it doesn't feel like a tactic. It feels like a moment. And moments are what people talk about. Or imagine a startup that responds to customer complaints quickly, with a real human voice, maybe even a little humor when it fits, instead of sending some robotic template that sounds like it was written by a committee. That's unexpected. And it's the kind of thing people screenshot and share. Or think about an entrepreneur who chooses to lead with value instead of pressure. They launch a free educational series, a workshop, a short email course, something that gives away real insight before asking for the sale. That's unexpected in a world where everyone is trying to close immediately. And it builds trust faster than 100 ads ever could. Different industries, different sizes, different strategies. But the thread is the same, they go beyond what people assumed they would do. And that's where growth often begins. Not just growing revenue, but growing your reputation and your relationship with customers. Now, here's a twist that most people miss. The element of surprise isn't just an external strategy for customers and competitors. It can be internal too. Meaning, use it on yourself. Surprise yourself with how disciplined you can be. Surprise yourself with how consistent you can become. Surprise yourself with how quickly you can recover after a setback. Because if we're being honest, a lot of people carry this quiet expectation that they'll eventually stop. That they'll burn out. That they'll quit. That they'll lose interest. That they'll go back to what's comfortable. So what happens when you become the person who doesn't follow that script? What happens when you show up again, even after a bad week? What happens when you keep your promises to yourself when nobody is watching? What happens when your default response to failure becomes, all right, what's the lesson, what's the adjustment, and what's the next attempt? Sometimes your biggest advantage is being unpredictable in your level of commitment. In a world full of people who start strong and fade fast, consistency itself becomes a surprise. Now, we do need to talk about the line between surprise and confusion. Because not every unexpected move is a smart move. Surprise without strategy can quickly become noise. And noise doesn't build trust. It just makes people wonder what you stand for. So the goal isn't to be random. The goal is to be meaningfully different. The goal is to create a positive disruption that makes sense for your brand and your customer. Here are a few questions you can ask yourself this week to sharpen that strategy. First, what am I doing exactly like everyone else in my space? Second, where has my business become so routine that it's basically on autopilot? Third, what could I do that would genuinely delight people, even in a small way? Fourth, if my competitors watched my next move, what would they assume I'm going to do, and what's a smarter alternative they won't see coming? Innovation often doesn't start with a massive invention. It starts with one decision that breaks the usual pattern. And that brings us to today's takeaway. In a crowded world, being better is helpful. But being different, in a way that creates a real experience, that's what becomes unforgettable. The businesses that grow aren't always the loudest. They aren't always the ones with the fanciest branding or the most aggressive marketing. A lot of the time, the ones that grow are the ones that create moments people talk about. Moments that feel personal. Moments that feel thoughtful. Moments that feel like, wow, I didn't expect that. So here's your challenge for the week. Add one element of surprise. It could be in how you lead your team. It could be in how you follow up with customers. It could be in the extra value you deliver after someone buys. It could be in how you show up for your own goals when you'd normally make an excuse. Pick one place where things have gotten predictable and introduce something unexpectedly excellent. Because sometimes the unexpected move becomes the breakthrough moment. Thanks for listening to Business Demotivation. If this episode sparked an idea, share it with someone who's building something that matters. Until next time, stay focused, stay creative, and never underestimate the power of surprise.